There. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Think Lab podcast number four. I was just joking. We're almost in double digits, and we're still in need of a sponsor. So if Diet Coke or anyone's available, definitely hit us up. You know what we didn't do last week? We didn't introduce ourselves. So I'll go first. Dave Lilja, Think Minnesota Realty. Dominic, you want to go?
Yeah, Dominic, Sisley, I think Minnesota Realty as well.
And I am Michael Stanton, and I'm with Lakes Sotheby's International Realty.
So, Mike, I'm sure people are at home wondering how's the hip? Anything you care to share without any violation of HIPAA laws or anything?
Well, if I'm spewing it, it's my personal data, so it's all good. No, my hip's doing great. Um, it's amazing how much better I am from day to day. And I'm walking without any assistance and up and down stairs. And the best thing is that I can finally reposition myself while I'm sleeping. So if I wake up, I don't have to just lay there on my back. I can actually turn over on my good side and fall back to sleep. So I'm finally sleeping through the night.
Nice,
That's a
congratulations.
big deal, trust
It
me.
is. Um, I did see some data the other day that we had talked about a couple weeks ago that there was actually a decline for the fourth quarter for NAR membership. It
A
was down
decline?
a decline, 45,000. It had actually gone up in the third quarter, and it actually is below 1.5 now for the first time in several years. Any
That's crazy.
takeaways?
And you know what? As of January 1st, in Minnesota, at least, where we all hail from, we do not need to be a member of NAR, National Association of Realtors, to access MLS. I have an issue with that, but because I'll always stay a member for the fiduciary responsibilities and the code of ethics that we must follow. So, important note.
Why
Just
does
paid my
that?
dues at the end
Oh,
of
go
December,
ahead.
so I'm gonna retain my membership as well.
You just paid your dues.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I just paid mine too, but it's a big deal. I mean, if you're not a
It
member of
is.
NAR, you no longer need to abide by the code of ethics. And I think that's a great question to ask your realtor, whether it's a buyer's agent or a listing agent, because if they're not a member of NAR, they do not need to abide by the realtor code of ethics. And that is a huge issue in my personal opinion.
What do you think is more important? Knowing if your agent is or knowing if the other agent in the transaction is?
I think it's important to know both. And I personally, if I hired a realtor to help me sell my property, if I did not want to represent myself, I personally would only hire a realtor that was a member of the National Association of Realtors, and I would say that both on the buy and the sell side, because the code of ethics is a very stringent code, and I find that to be very, very important. That is my opinion. And I now know how to tell, because we talked about this, if a realtor is or is not a member of the National Association of Realtors. And according to the compliance officer in our brokerage, when you look up in the upper left-hand corner of the documents and it basically has that logo, it will no longer be there.
What logo?
The information that these are official documents from, well, look at, I don't know exactly how to explain this, but it's in blue ink.
It's on the
And
bottom left.
yeah,
Because our logo, what I was wondering is if it was your logo. So typically the brokerage that is writing the paperwork, their logo is on the top left. So when you
yes.
said the upper, that's what threw me.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, the brokerage that you have your license held with is on the upper left, but at the bottom page, part of the page, you'll see the
Yeah, I'm
logo.
looking at the bottom right. It says Minnesota Realtors on this form.
Correct.
Yeah, there you go.
According to our compliance officer, that won't be there.
Something to
We'll
watch for.
see. We'll see.
So, do they have access to the form? It just doesn't say Minnesota Realtor
I do believe they have access to the form,
because they
um,
can be an MLS member, correct?
but they don't need to be part of NAR or Minnesota Association of Realtors. I think they can just be what's called an agent. They're not technically going to be able to use that term realtor.
Right.
And not to beat a dead horse into submission, but won't be required to abide by the Realtor Code of Ethics.
Dominic, go ahead.
Which number one is the number one um, ethic. Well, the first ethical code is number one, just being basically honest to the other side of the transaction. So think about that.
Dominic, what's your thoughts?
Um, I like the fact that it's not required now, I guess, moving forward. The optionality, I think, is good for a free market. So if you want to be a member, you can. If you don't, you're not. Because I think it's important to have access to the MLS, even if you're a realtor or not, so that folks aren't kind of locked out of the market. They can still do business. But that said, I do think there's definitely benefit to being a member of NAR. But from an agent perspective, I do think the optionality is something that is good to have. And I think maybe it's a good segue into the conversation we're going to have today about how do you present yourself to potential clients, either on the sell or the buy side. And that could be something you touch on in terms of the importance of being a member. It's something you can kind of tout if you are.
So let's go right into that. If if you were going to meet with a buyer, phone, Zoom, in person, where do you start, Dominic? Where do you start? Someone calls you up through Zillow or a lead source, or they see your sign, or you're involved in your community. Somebody calls up and says, "Hey, I'm interested in seeing a house." Where do you typically start on that initial conversation, and how do you get to showing them houses? Do you have a
Yeah. I like to get a sense of kind of where they're at, either from an experience standpoint, like have they bought or sold a home before? And then, from a short-term perspective, if they're looking to buy, always curious if they've gone through pre-approval, if they've talked to a lender, or if they're just, I had an idea today, I woke up and I want to go look at houses. So I try to get a gauge of where that person is at and their kind of their journey and when are they reaching me at that point, right? So that I can kind of, from that point, either think about what resources I have to help give them, or what should I talk to them about if this is something brand new to them. What does representation entail? What are the fiduciary responsibilities that I would owe to you when and if you became a client of mine? So I do a little bit of that discovery first, and try to just have a conversation with them. So not everyone is a fit for one reason or another, but whether it's with me or me with them. But I think it's just, I like to be conversational about it. So I just kind of start there and see, meet them where they're at, and then ultimately help decide if this is something we want to kind of mutually pursue together. That's probably easier within your sphere, friends, family, to have that, start that conversation. My business, I meet a lot of folks that I have not worked with before. So it's a good starting point to kind of, start to build the relationship and kind of venture from that point.
Mike?
Well, when I receive a signed call or an internet call from a listing that I have on the market and they're asking me to go and see the property, I basically just start with asking them, what attracted them to the property? What are they actually looking for? Um, it's always interesting to me to ask them how they found me and my phone number to give me a call. I'm kind of referring back to a property that I've had listed down in Red Wing, and the seller did not want a sign in the front yard. So um, it was more of an internet find off of YouTube. If the person that I'm talking to on the phone starts talking about price, terms, motivation, things like that, I stop right away and just tell them because they've talked about those things, I need to, by Minnesota law, explain agency to them. And so I go through what a buyer agency's fiduciary responsibilities and duties are. And I also let them know about dual agency because I would be a dual agent, which changes things in that transaction if I'm the listing and the buy side. And right then and there, I give them an opportunity if they want to call a different agent um, to be able to do that. I let them know right then and there. Um, and some people do, some people just say, nope, I want to work with the listing agent. Um, and so we talk about the house. I've gone through the pictures with the person on the phone because I just pull up my Home Spotter app. We just go through the pictures and talk about different things. And I can kind of give them a virtual tour that way and answer a lot of questions. I point out things about the house that I know that I have to disclose. Um, and if they at that point want to set up a time to physically see the house, then I explain to them that before we do that, I need to send them a buyer representation agreement because that's the new standard. And I have them sign that and send it back to me. Um, and then we schedule an appointment to see the property. But it's a lot of asking questions and listening to what they're looking for. And sometimes from those conversations, they realize, you know what, this isn't really the house I really want to see after all. But I asked their permission to keep in touch with them, and we take it from there.
Are you or
I
either
have to, I have to let the dog out. See, look at I stood up.
are either of you seeing an increase in buyer calls right now?
I think I am. I always feel like right after the new year, things start to kind of pick back up, and so volume has definitely gone up in terms of the outreach that I've gotten. So I don't know if you've been seeing the same, but it definitely feels like there's been an uptick given, we're past kind of the Thanksgiving and Christmas time of year.
Mike, how about you? I know you've been kind of on the shelf a little bit, but
Yeah, I've been kind of on the shelf recovering, but I have been working transactions, through the process now that my mind is clear and I'm kind of back at it. But just yesterday, I received an email from a buyer, and it basically said, "Hi, Mike, it's finally time!" Exclamation point. And they want to start looking for a property. The wedding is coming up very shortly, and this is basically a referral from a person within inside my sphere, the daughter of a person that I've known since we were kids. And when I get chosen by the adult child of a friend, I'm like, that's a big deal to me because that tells me that I've passed their online presence. Um, But yeah, I mean, we're going to start looking for properties here once I can drive and have our initial consultation and talk about what they're looking for. And so, and it'll be a fairly upper bracket purchase. So I'm excited about that.
how about sellers? How do you guys approach a seller call? Hey, I'm interested in selling. We'll start with you, Mike. How do you normally ramp up that process?
Um, the first thing is, well, first of all, I thank them for the call. And again, I ask them how they knew of me to call me to kind of get an idea if it's coming from online, if it's coming from a sign from a house that I have on the market, or if it's coming from a mailing. Um, but basically, it's the same type of thing. If they start talking about price, motivation, reason for selling, I go straight into the agency and I explain agency like we just discussed for buyers. But I always, always, always explain what the fiduciary responsibilities are. And I know it's really nerdy, but I tell them how we were in school and we were taught this acronym called OLD CAR. So I go through the obedience, loyalty. I mean, I go through the whole thing. And most often than not, if they have sold a property before, they're like, you're the first person that's ever explained that to us. But I find that to be a really good thing to let them know that, my loyalty is to them and not to myself. Um, I give them kind of like the highlights of how I work with buyers and what services I offer. I don't offer a menu of services. I offer basically my services. That's just how I sell properties because I want to get it sold. So I'm not going to shortchange them. Um,
Do you have a
and then
formal presentation or is it mostly verbal?
on the phone, it's verbal, but I've said it enough that I know what I want to put across. And then we schedule a meeting to meet in person. And at that point in time, it's it's more formal. And I use the assets that I have to present our company and the power of our brand, as well as me and how I work. Um, and that it's just really important for me to have a relationship, like a team relationship, because we will choose the price of the house together. I won't tell them what to put in. They will have skin in the game in every step.
Dominic?
Yeah, similar in a lot of ways. I think tackling some of that, kind of the administrative stuff with the, fiduciary duty and how real estate agency actually comes together. But beyond that, I find, I like to actually get out to a property. So, see it, talk to them in person, get them, show me around the house, give me their perspective on things. And that is kind of my opportunity to present myself. I find that it tends to be more of a conversation. And, short of having a formal presentation, a lot of what I'll do is just bring the research that I've done, whether it be a CMA or, looking at maps, if it's a big piece of acreage, one of the interesting things I see about it that I can look at online and walk in with a general opinion that I can then kind of confirm or deny as I get kind of in person and chat with them. So it ends up being kind of a walking, talking kind of immersive presentation. But I try to build trust by showing that, I care. I'm always humbled when people call me and they want me to, potentially list their home for sale. So I do think it's interesting to understand, how did you hear about me? Where did you get my contact information? Did someone refer you? I think those are all good inputs, because it's a big job and it's a big responsibility. And I'm always, I do appreciate when folks are reaching out and want to consider me for that job. But I think research and, having kind of an educated opinion going in is my best way to present myself, talk through our services. And the other thing that I do find, that we get complimented on quite a bit is that a lot of folks aren't breaking down how commission structures work, fees, who's getting paid, whether things are negotiable or not, which they are. And I find that to be a very powerful conversation when you get to that point, when it comes down to, okay, what are our fees and what are our commissions, and how does that work with a buyer? And it's a good opportunity to kind of lay it all out for them and really explain to them end to end kind of how this all works. And I feel like that's a really good way that I've built trust with folks, so that they don't feel like there's anything that's not, that everything's transparent at that point. There's no gotchas, no hidden clauses, anything like that. I go through the listing contract page by page. I let them ask questions. I like to kind of, pause and just and give them a second to think about it, because there's a lot that goes into those, and I think it's important that people read through them and have a chance to think about it and ask questions. So those are the steps that I typically take to try and, present myself in the best way and build trust, and hopefully at the end of the day, secure the listing. But always working on behalf of them and working to achieve their goals.
In today's world that everything is phone and text, and we do so much by e-signing. Do any of you send the forms to them in a PDF to review? Do any of you push to sign in person? Or are you sending the form to them first in the e-signing block?
Depends on the situation.
Uh,
Personally, I end up doing a lot of in-person signings, at least on the listing side. It feels like, where, like I said, I'm there looking at the property. At the end of that conversation, if they decide this is what the way I want to go, I have everything physically printed out, ready to go in case we want to get to that step. Um, with buyers, a lot of the times, especially if we haven't met before, I will send them, kind of pre-filled out but not ready to sign yet, just so they can read through it, ask questions, especially if they haven't done a buyer representation before, because I like to give them the opportunity to read through it without saying, "Hey, just sign this so we can go see the property." So I like to kind of tee it up, depending on the situation, but always an opportunity to read through, ask questions, and make sure they're comfortable before agreeing to anything.
I find that working with buyers, you don't have to read the room as much. If the buyer likes you, they're going to more than likely sign because at the end, they just really want to see the property, right? And I think it's
Hmm.
really easy to get in the way of what they want to do. I find that sellers are more complicated because you have to really figure out who the voice, if you have two people or multiple, you have to really figure out who is driving the ship. We've done some deals this year where we've had four and more. We've had multiple deals. I've had personally multiple deals where I'm dealing with four or more sellers. It's it's children that have inherited the property. It's multiple sellers. And I find that trying to figure out who the main person is, you're always going to have one that kind of just goes along with the pack. You're going to have one that thinks that they know what they want on price. They know what they want on everything. And then you kind of have a fill-in. But even if you have two sellers, there's that whole business thing of, try to figure out who the leader is, who wears the pants. And do you guys spend a lot of time trying to figure out who are you trying to win over in the conversation? And do you find yourself paying more attention to them versus say the other one, or do you try to keep it 50-50?
I try to keep it 50-50. Um, or if it's a larger group, because I have had experiences as well where there's been four grown adult children dealing with the sale of deceased parents' properties. But each of those grown adult children are also married, which brings in four more people. So you need eight signatures on every single thing you do.
And the Minnesota forums are not user friendly for more than two people.
No, I mean, you've
No.
got, no, you've got these signature blocks all over the place. But um, I just find it really important to talk to them as a unit. If I know which one has the power of attorney or the person in charge of distributing the estate, we usually agree that that's the point person and they can talk amongst themselves. I once had a situation where one brother wouldn't sign, and it got to the point that, you know, not to be, I mean, I'm like, I don't care if you sign or not. I mean, if you don't sign, you don't get to sell the house. So that's just the way it is. And if you fire me and get another realtor, nothing's going to change. So you've come this far, and those are when it's really dysfunctional siblings, which happens often. But back to talking to them, I talk to them as a unit. I don't feel like I have to impress one over the other. Um, and I just listen to each of their questions. If somebody asks me a question, I answer it. I look them in the eye and answer it. If I don't know, I'll flat out say I don't know, but let's figure it out. And sometimes I get people on the phone right then and there on speaker and get it figured out. And people are pretty impressed with that. They're like, man, you don't waste any time. And I'm like, time is of the essence, man.
I don't have time to waste.
Yeah, it's like, why should you wait till tomorrow when I can just call somebody right this second and put them on speaker? It's great.
Do
And you
you
don't win every listing. You just don't. I mean, there's something you just don't. And don't feel bad because sometimes it's a gift in disguise, you know?
so if they're
Have you had
interviewing
any?
oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Dominic.
I was just curious because I've had experiences too where, like, if it's say it's a married couple, where one of them just says, "Hey, this is totally their thing. Like, just work with them. I'll sign whatever you need me to sign." But like, they tell you that, like, I don't really want to be involved, but just they're the lead person on this, and so makes it easy, I guess. But um, sometimes people, I find that they just don't, they want to throw their hands up, and they don't want any part of it. They want the other person to kind of take the lead and do it all.
What's
And
interesting,
sometimes, I'm sorry. And
what's
sometimes that's
interesting,
exactly right. Sometimes that's exactly right. But when you have larger groups, it's like sometimes most everybody just wants somebody to make a decision, like
Yeah,
make a decision. And then if once the decision is made, if somebody disagrees with it, then it comes out. But you can't just forever keep looking around the circle and passing the buck. And it's like somebody just decide.
yeah, what I was going to say is it, what's interesting about like Dominic was saying, okay, this is the point person, or however you describe that married couple. What's funny is I always struggle when you have like seller A and seller B, and B is going to be the point person, and all you have is communication with B. I always worry, even though A said, I'll go along with whatever, I always worry that A is so out of the loop that I always feel like I need to reach out to them to say, are you good? Are you are you
right.
comfortable with the direction? Are you comfortable with the price? Are you comfortable with the offer? Are you comfortable with the terms? And I usually just try to say, if you text me without your spouse, I'm going to probably reply to that. But I prefer, for my comfort level, a group text.
Mm,
And if you anoint a spokesperson, that's fine. But I really want the other four or five or six or seven people. I want them to be able to make sure that they can reach out and ask questions, because I always feel like somebody, it's really easy to say they're the point person. I don't want to be responsible, but I always worry that they get left behind and then they realize that money's involved, or maybe I need to pay more attention to it. That's
yeah.
sometimes where I really struggle on that.
I agree. I prefer group texts um, and also everybody on the email. I mean, they might not be the point person to make a decision, but communication seems to be still to this day the number one complaint um, on realtors from buyers or sellers. And I just want to nip that right in the bud and just make sure everybody's getting the information. Maybe only one person's replying, but I just keep it that way. Unless they flat out say, stop sending me emails. If they flat out say, stop sending me emails, and it comes in written form, then I have that in writing. Stop sending me emails. Um, and of course, then I will because I don't want to, you know, start anything.
Change the subject.
Woo! What are we going to now?
Books. Anyone read a
Ooh,
good real estate book in 24?
sure. What do you got?
No, did you? Have you any real estate books?
I I have just finished a book and I've read it twice. And last night I started reading it for the third time because it's one of those short little books like Who Moved My Cheese. It's not specifically for real estate, but I absolutely love, 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 love this book. And it's called The Go Giver. And it's very applicable to real estate. The Go Giver.
I feel like I heard this about this book just recently.
It's fantastic.
All right, book club, go giver. Drop us a comment and we'll set up a book club. All right, Dominic,
Great.
anything for you?
uh,
Yeah, there's different laws of stratospheric success, and it starts with just giving. So I'll give you a little teaser. Always give more in value than you will receive in payment. Let that sink in.
I like that.
Dominic, any
Um,
books for you?
my books in 2024 were probably. all the books I read my kids. They're 3 and 6 years old, so most of my readings was Roald Dahl, the BFG, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, those types. So not
Good night,
specific to the
Moon.
a lot of Goodnight Moon. Yeah, we just got on to Amelia Bedelia. My oldest son is very literal, so I thought that would be a funny one for him. But as far as real estate goes, I like to podcasts and YouTube is kind of where I spend a lot of my where I get my information. So Dave, I think one that I know you've watched, the Knowledge Brokers is one that I try and stay up to date with as far as real estate goes. It's another good pod. If you're not watching ours, I would recommend you go and listen to that one.
Oh, speaking of ours, Dominic, we need you to give the legal disclaimer about oh, do
Yeah. Despite all the entertainment value you're going to get from this, this is not financial advice by any means. So
or real
please do not
estate.
take it as such or real estate advice.
Or legal advice.
Oh yeah, good point.
But
I
if you call us and you want to sign a contract, then we can give you, real estate advice.
I read a book, well, half of it. It's a new book that came out in November called The Art of War for Real Estate Agents. It's written by a Keller Williams agent. I believe he's out east. And I got through half, and then I felt I really liked the first 25%. I really liked the middle 25. I got a little nervous about, and I stopped about halfway through because I thought it was kind of on repeat. I feel like there's so many real estate books that talk about the same thing. And I don't know if you're laughing, Michael, because
No, I'm not laughing, but I just think that's a great reason for a book doesn't have to be long to be good. A book can be short and sweet.
yep,
I personally, when you said the title, I was kind of like, my first gut reaction was, I don't like that title
why?
because I don't like the word war. It just sounds like because what I have evolved to, how I started in real estate was kind of like that. Like I have to win. I have to be the BMOC. I've got to outdo this other realtor. And in reality, I've become more successful with realizing that the realtor and I, no matter what side we are on, are fiduciaries for the client we're working for. We are the mouthpiece for the client we are working for. We are the communicator of what the client wants or doesn't want. And the more we cooperate instead of being adversarial, which is what the war term sounds, gives us more options and more um, quicker endpoint to success. So I would rename that book, but it might be a great, selling tactic, I don't know. That's I got opinions, Dave.
So it's so funny. So for those that don't know our background, I started at Keller Williams. Michael started at Keller Williams.
Yes, sir.
And we had like a in-house coach, great lady, and she wanted everyone to come up with like a slogan or something. And my slogan has always been always compete. And she hated it. She hated it for the same reason that Michael just said about the art of war. And what's funny is I actually wear a bracelet that says always compete.
Okay.
And I view,
I don't think there's anything wrong with competition. I love a good competition.
see, how I take that title and how I take that mantra isn't necessarily win lose. Because I do believe that you can have multiple winners. Like everyone can win. A buyer can win, a seller can win, the agents can win. Like there can be a multiple level.
Right.
I view it as preparation. I view it as if you're going to go into a game or a battle or whatever analogy you want to use, I want to be prepared.
Agreed.
I don't like going into the, hey, can I schedule a call at 2 o'clock? I hate those. I want to know what the call is at 2 o'clock. Give me a heads up. We're going to
Right.
talk about this. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk whatever. So it's funny that this title, I wasn't going to go there until you threw it under the train, Michael. But I think when you talk about like a listing presentation or a buyer presentation, I want to be prepared. I want to
Exactly.
have these conversations with my client for them to make the best determination of whether or not I'm the right fit. I want to know about their house from a data standpoint. I want to know about their house from an emotional standpoint, what their
Yeah.
why is. I want to know where they see themselves going. I want to know everything so I can be my best, which translates to their win.
And I don't disagree with one thing that you said.
So
I
go ahead.
No, I don't disagree with anything that you just said at all, because it all makes complete sense. I mean, you want to be prepared. I mean, if you want to win a war, you need to be prepared and you need to have strategy. My strategies have changed over the years. I typically stay away from adversarial strategies and I go more towards cooperative strategies or giving strategies, huh? The go-giver. Um, but anyway,
Okay,
it's
so let me ask you this. You're all parents. Dominic, your kids are significantly younger. And if
oh,
you play a game with your kid, are you winning? Are you losing? Are you letting it go? Are you, let's just
This is a
say,
very
I don't know, whatever. And obviously, Dominic, your kids are significantly younger. But if you were to play a game, are you beating them? Trying to beat them?
this is very topical right now. My oldest son he's been wanting to learn how to play chess. So we have like this kids chess thing that has like this little story that teaches him how the pieces move, and so we started by doing that, and now we're actually doing it where we're playing against each other, and so he can move the pieces, but he doesn't quite understand the strategy of chess yet. And so, I've now when we could play head to head, I have beat him a number of times now, and part of that is a lesson that like you're not always going to win. And I had to explain to him that like my dad beat me at chess for a long time until I learned how to play, and now I'm probably going to beat you for a while. There are
mhm.
occasions where I let him, I let him take a round just to make him feel good, boost the confidence. But most of the time, for now at least, I think I've beaten him just to kind of get that competitive edge, kind of understanding what that takes.
Michael?
My kids are grown up, 28 and 26. And when they were small, I mixed it up. Sometimes I would crush them. Sometimes I would just make it head to head and then I'd beat them in the end. Sometimes I would let them beat me, but think that they just did this awesome job. So I just found for me, having them win sometimes, having them lose sometimes, having them lose big, having them lose like in a OT kind of a scenario. The little boys love to beat their dads. They love to be able to run faster than their dads. Um, but little girls do too. I mean, my kids were both hockey players and athletes but I mixed it up. I mixed it up.
So tying this back into the being prepared, I've coached at all these levels, whatever. And I always found that the kid that came to practice at the last minute, the one that is struggling to get out of the car, and it's not their fault. They don't drive, 10-year-olds don't drive. And I always felt like those kids that came in unprepared always had their worst game. They had their worst practice because it's just chaos. It's chaos maybe for the parent to get them there. Where are we going? Where is this field? Where is this arena? Whatever. Or we're late. Do I have my jersey? Do I not? Like it adds to all this. So when the kid comes, their mind is full of other stuff. And I'm not expecting a kid to get to a game 4 hours before and sit in a Zen like, whatever. I just I just come from that area that you want to be on time, if not early. You want to know your forms. You want to put your best foot forward. You want to prepare as best you can. I mean, I've gone into meetings that I thought the meeting was going here and it's 180 degrees, but I was always able to go back to why I was going to be of value to them, why I thought their pricing strategy was a great way to look at it, or I thought it was completely wrong. I thought, how their buying process was flawed or how it was spot on. That's how I view the word compete, that it's putting your best foot forward and knowing what's going on and being prepared.
So did you crush the kids, or did you let them win sometimes?
Monopoly, crush them.
Poor bear.
Crush them.
He's a poor bear. He's a pancake.
Um,
Poor
but
little
I
bear.
lost in Monopoly for the first time, like late summer last year. I was so frustrated. Um, it depended on the game, the physical games, basketball, street hockey, whatever. It was 50-50. I think there's
Yep.
a reason to let them beat you. I think there's a reason to let them for their growth, for their mindset. I think it puts them in a position to think about it. If they're going to always get beat, they're probably a little less, you know, right. But, games as a whole are so different. You look at video games. I mean, I
Yeah.
watched Bear play a video game, he's getting crushed and he just like reset or he lowers the level or you just turn it off or you create a new. I mean, it was kind of that way, I guess, with us. I mean, it wasn't a big video game, but the number of times you just get a new person and whatever and go again. But I think that's you know I I was torn, but Monopoly stuff like that, I always wanted to win.
I
So
love the game that you can play on your phone. That pool game. You can game pigeon and you can play pool. You ever done game pigeon?
no.
Oh, I'll send it to you. But anyway, I mean, you can just literally get your butt whipped by a 7-year-old in a game like that, and you can't even help it. And so I love playing things like that because it's fun. Um,
So my daughter and I, we played a game when she was in school as a freshman and sophomore. There's a game out called Wordly, and you get a silhouette of a country, and you have to guess. You have 5 guesses what the country is, and if you guess whatever, it will tell you how many miles you're wrong. And so her and I would compete and keep score that, it was Argentina, it was whatever. And we had done this for like 7 months. And what we learned by accident, because there was one that I don't think I got. Like I think I had to take a 6. And
you miss chili, huh?
yeah. And she got it on the first guess. And I was like,
Uh,
I have no idea how she knew this was some, wild country that I had no idea. She sent me a screenshot of her thing. And it turned out that by coincidence, we were getting different countries. And so it was like Papua New Guinea for me, right? And she had like Canada. And so here I am giving myself a 6. So like we had done this for months. And then we quickly realized that our scores were
Oh, funny.
completely irrelevant, but we were competing and I took it serious every day. And yeah, it was funny. So
well, I think it's good to teach kids that sometimes you lose and sometimes you win. And my favorite, well, it wasn't my favorite, but it was my favorite, is when the kids were really small and the coaches in the hockey would be like, we're not going to keep score and we're just going to let the kids play. And at the end of in their locker room, we cream those guys 16-2. It's like the kids know. They're keeping score in their head. They know exactly what's going on.
We're all
So,
competitive by nature, right?
oh, geez. It's like, come on. It's okay. It's perfectly okay.
All right, so last
In my
question.
opinion.
Yeah, last question, then we're up against a deadline. What's one new thing you're doing for 25? We talked about goals last time, but what's one new thing you're doing this year?
Good question.
Dominic.
Put me on the spot. One new thing I'm doing for 25 is, well, the podcast I would include, although we started in 2024, but this
Yeah.
continuation of this. But probably just more, try to be better about more social media, more kind of just like, you know, friendly ways to stay top of mind, short of just pestering people through text and calling. So that would be one thing,
Michael?
being better at social media.
My number one thing is I'm going to really go deep with video. And I'm using video as an um, reaching umbrella. Obviously, video and social media, but I have a BombBomb account that I use on occasion. But I'm really going to go into the video because when you do get a call from a buyer or from a possible seller, when you have that video library of what you want them to know about you, like you can send it off, poof, just like that. And speed is very, very important. Information, letting them see your true personality, how you operate, kind of get to feel like who you are as a person. And I think in today's world, I mean, video, 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 video. So my word is video.
I heard. All right, enjoy your week. Mike,
Oh,
go compete.
come. You guys should come visit me. I need to see some new faces.
We will. I'll come. Let
Right
me
on.
know.
Come on down.
All right. See you guys. Peace out.
Thank
You
you.
guys.